acknowledges that we operate on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and the wait, I don't have the package. Scroll up.
Is it in here?
Scroll up. Sorry, my apologies. The Wilfrid Laurier University, the Wilfrid Laurier University Students Union acknowledges that we operate on the territory, traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee people. I'd like to start off this meeting with calling any conflicts of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest to declare for today's meeting? Okay, as I see none, we will move on to the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion on the table of the Board of Directors to adopt the agenda as presented? Director Ellis and Director Corey. Any discussion on the matter? Okay, as I see none, we will now move into voting. Any opposition to the motion? Abstentions? All those in favor? I'll need to get a call from for the amount of votes in the boardroom, as I cannot see everyone there.
6 votes yay.
Okay, the vote passes 0-0 to 11. On to the adoption of the consent agenda. Any discussion on consent agenda items? Director Corey.
Just one thing, there was, it was in the president update, sorry, I'm just pulling it up now. But there was a sentence that was cut off on the first monitoring report that I just wanted to check in on.
Would you be able to give the specifics?
Yeah, 1 second. There's. Sorry, give me 2 seconds and I'll just come back.
All right, any further comments on the consent agenda? As I see none, we can I get a motion that the Board of Directors adopt the consent agenda as presented? Well, we'll table the motion and go into discussion.
Oh, okay.
Vice Chair Rubinoff, followed off by Director Phillips. We will now move into discussion. Director Corey?
Yeah, sorry, sorry about the way with that. It's for EL2C2. And it's the third one of the operational definition. The students union bases new higher wage. I just wanted to double check on that because I feel like that's probably a cutoff sentence.
President Spendler.
Okay, sorry, give me 1 sec. Okay. You just want my updates, right, Mo?
Oh,
The Director Corey has asked you a question.
Sorry, just for
Oh,
EL2C, sorry, EL2C2, for your third point under operational definition, I think it got cut off.
Oh, give me 1 second. Let me open it.
Okay.
Hold on. EL2C.
C2.
Sorry, wait, which one? I have the report up, but which one got cut off?
I think 0.3 under operational definition, it reads the students union bases new higher wage.
Okay, do you want to put it, just for sake of time, do you want to put in the chat and I can look into it and then resend it to Orlin if it did get cut off? I can just look for it on the side.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, that works for me too. Any further questions on consent agenda? Okay, as I see none, we can now move into voting. Any opposition to the motion? Abstention?
Yeah.
All those in favor to the motion? Can I get a count in the Waterloo boardroom?
There's six.
Oh, motion passes 0-0 to 11. Thank you. Can you just scroll?
Mm.
back, please? Okay. On to comments from the chair of the board and the CGO. Good evening. Hope everyone has been having a good semester so far. It is nearly Halloween. I'd like to send a kind reminder to all directors that you are students, but you are also directors who may be known. I expect professionalism, the utmost professionalism to all events that you attend, to not bring disrepute to the board. I would hopefully like to meet next weekend, or next weekend. I would hopefully like to meet with the board in 2 weeks' time without having a public incident. Thank you. As for correspondence, I have not received any positive emails from directors confirming their attendance, with the exception of 1 or 2. I'd like to kindly remind directors that they must reply to the invitation email with me and the governance coordinator, so that we do not have confusion as to who is coming and who is not. I would like to appreciate the director, Sloan, for sending his regrets ahead of time. And that's it for me. On to comments from the president. Oh, wait, does anybody have any questions for me? As I see none, we can now move on to comments from the president and CEO.
Awesome, thank you. So first and foremost, we hosted USA GA this weekend. Part of the reason I'm virtual tonight, as I was off today after quite an interesting weekend. But it was honestly a great success. We pushed through and did all the papers, whereas last year we finished virtual, so we did it differently, but it was probably for the best. So we were in the Senate and board for 14 hours yesterday, and we approved 3 papers: rural and northern students, student health and wellness, and housing and transit. So 2 of our student ABPs were actually authors on those, so that was really exciting to see. Kind of on a different wavelength, we did 2 events last week for Thrive Week. I saw a lot of you at those events, so that was great. Both of them were a success and just kind of contributed to like our overall goal of having like more FaceTime with students. Kind of on the same theme, I also traveled to Brantford Homecoming, which was a good experience, and we're able to connect with some students there, and even was able to share kind of my feedback for next year's homecoming and kind of things that I've observed with athletics and alumni, so that was cool. This upcoming Saturday is open house on the Waterloo campus. So for high school students, they'll be coming. If they did a tour with us and they want to know more, they're coming to our campus. So we're part of the campus experience fair. So looking forward to that. And once again, just more FaceTime with prospective students. I'm also working with a director of marketing on more creative and intentional campaigns to connect with students. So that's kind of an ongoing conversation on a weekly basis, and also looking to get you guys involved at some point, kind of with like SU does that, and having you guys participate in that as well, and getting you more FaceTime with students. So once I kind of have that idea more formalized, I'll definitely bring that to you guys. And finally, I had my feedback meeting with Mo last week, so I just wanted to thank you all for the kind feedback. It was very well received, and I'm excited to continue working with all of you and just kind of building on this relationship. Yeah, any questions?
Awesome. Any questions for the president and CEO?
And then I
Any
guess just one more thing, Sebastian, Ian had sent me in the background the thing that got cut off, so I'm going to fix that, and then Orlin will put it in the next agenda for the November 13th meeting with that full sentence.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I just wasn't sure, so. figured I'd
Thanks
ask.
for catching that. Very diligent of you.
Quick question for the president. How was your engagement with USA and where do you expect, what results do you expect from that exercise in regards to our advocacy efforts?
Yeah, it was, can you be more specific? And like what
Yeah.
to answer?
What were some of the big, I guess, successes that we've achieved, and how will the exercise benefit our advocacy efforts?
Got it. Yeah, so I'd say some of the big successes, like I kind of mentioned, having the 3 papers go through yesterday was like a huge success because 9 times out of 10 they run out of time and then they continue virtual, and sometimes it takes like weeks or even a couple months to find a time that works virtual with everyone. So that was like, I would say, a huge success in itself that we just kind of pushed through, and that was actually Viv, like my VP's decision since she's the USA president. So kudos to her for making that decision. I think having our 2 AVPs as authors is very relevant to our organization, obviously, because they worked on those papers for the past few months. And with that being said, I actually learned a bit more about this yesterday, but given that it's like working with the government, obviously these changes aren't going to go through overnight. And it's like quite the process. But I think given that our VP is the president of USA, she's going to be very active in those changes. And I think it's really awesome that she kind of spearheads everything, and then she can kind of filter everything through our organization as well with our advocacy committees on both campuses. So I think having her in that position, I think I got a new kind of perspective on it this weekend of how beneficial it really is to have our VP in that position. And I saw her play a really big role this weekend. So that was really great. And she wasn't an author, just given that she's the president of USA, so she has so much on her plate already. But I think having her and the 2 AVPs so involved will really have a very positive impact on our advocacy work on both campuses.
Okay, perfect. That's wonderful. Any further questions or comments for the president and CEO? Okay, as I see none, we can now move on to the comments from the executive director and chief operating officer.
Hey, before I begin, I'd just like to point out to the chair that we skipped over the adoption of the minutes.
Oh, yes. We can do that after your comments if you'd like.
Okay, I don't have a ton of comments to update. We provide a more detailed update at the meeting on the 16th. But we continue to meet with our student affairs partners with regards to all the work that student affairs does and some of the detailed survey work that's going to be coming out in the next couple of days. Continuing to work with facilities asset management on a variety of different projects. Obviously, the big ticket one is going to be the air handling unit stuff that we've been talking about for several months at this point. We're also working through a Wills renovations project, just trying to get concepts and designs before kind of going to tender. And then there's also the Brantford project that is ongoing. Other than that, I mean, it's been pretty busy, our business as usual for the last couple of weeks.
Any questions for the executive director and CEO? I guess I'm going to ask my boilerplate question. Any progress on any of our big 3 issues that we have discussed throughout this term?
So air handling units being the biggest in my mind, the answer to that is no. Although possibly, but there's not a lot of information worth updating at that point. On the OPA, those conversations will go hand in hand. It's also entirely possible that your interpretation of big 3 and mine are different. So if I miss something, please let me know. And then the SAAA is ongoing. We're in the process of trying to re-up what that looks like for the next year. We had a very positive couple of meetings today, actually. The Student Affairs Advisory Council met and kind of went through the year-to-date financials for the Department of Student Affairs. Everything seems to be kind of as hunky-dory as we can be, given the circumstances at the institution. But we are kind of finding some bumps in some of the new processes that we've got out, but we're trying to smooth those out. And the first of which will be the Student Enhancement Fund process, which is the process that will hopefully ultimately replace the Student Life Levy Fund process, and funding student affairs projects across both campuses. So that process, literally, I sent it to the first project person today to test how that goes. We'll see how that submission goes and figure it out as we go.
Anything on the Brantford hospitality since the briefing note?
So. Yes, but I'm not entirely sure what was discussed in open session versus in camera. But the long story short is, there's been quite a lot of progress and quite a lot of delays. But our project, strategic initiative, director of strategic initiatives is the project manager on that for us. And continues to work diligently with facilities asset management to kind of get that space ready to go. And we are hoping, knocks on wood, to be able to open as soon as humanly possible so that we can kind of deliver that service to the students of Brantford and the community at large.
So do we have an estimated time of completion, or at least just for stage one for the Brantford hospitality? Do we think we can get something done maybe by winter term?
It is my hope that before winter term starts, we'll have a soft open, and that at the beginning of winter term, we'll have a hard open. But those are gonna be aggressive targets to be able to hit.
Okay, perfect. So as the any further questions for the executive director and chief operating officer? Okay, as I see none, we will actually go into the adoption of the minutes. Can I get a motion on the table that the board of directors adopt the minutes of the October 16th, 2023 meeting? Director Hamilton, followed by Director Corey. Any further, does anybody have any discussion on the motion? Comments on the minutes?
One thing on the minutes from October 16th,
Mhm.
there's a reference to the VP of ERT, which I think is supposed to be PSW. That's the only thing I saw.
Do you want to send the minute package back?
No, not for that. Just kind of highlighting again from our discussion from, I guess, 2 weeks ago, just kind of making sure that all the details are there.
Okay. Awesome. I'll relay that to the board secretary. We'll now move into voting. Any opposition to the motion? Any abstention? All those in favor?
6 here.
Motion passes 0 to 11. On to the auditor's report by the Director of Finance and Administration.
Hi, good evening, everyone. For those of you that are new on the board, each year our financial results from the previous year and financial activity is reviewed by our external auditors from KPMG. So at this point, I'd like to turn the discussion over to Matt Beddick from KPMG, and he will take us through the draft statements that have been prepared so far. So go ahead, Matt.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Yes, and as Chris said, my name is Matt Beddick. I'm the lead partner from KPMG for the Student Union Audited Financial Statements. With me is Janelle Van High over there on my screen to the right. Janelle's the manager on the account. So we'll take a few minutes to walk through the statements, address any questions, and then once the board has a chance to approve the financial statements, we'll be in a position to issue our audit opinion on them. And so just a little bit of a background in terms of what we do and why. As Chris said, the financial statements are for the fiscal year of the student union. So that's May 1st, 2022 to April 30th, 2023. It sort of mirrors the school year as well as it mirrors the year of the university as well. In our role as auditors, what we do is we go through the financial accounts and we obtain, evidence and support to make sure that they're fairly and accurately presented. So our role is not to necessarily evaluate the effectiveness of the programs or how well the student union has spent the money, but really to verify that the money was actually spent where they say it was spent, and that the assets and the liabilities at the end of the year are accurate. And then the board, along with the executive team, can then use that information in planning its financial activities going forward. So with that, I'll pass over Janelle. She'll share the screen and take you through the statements for a couple of minutes. Janelle?
Great, thanks, Matt. Okay, I think I should have this screen shared with this statement of financial position showing. So we'll go over some of. Perfect, thanks. So we'll go over some of the major changes from prior years. So first, you'll see the cash. So this is decreased about 500,000 from prior year. So for changes in cash, this can vary year to year, and it usually has several different balance sheet accounts that are going to impact this. Where you'll see a more detailed look at this is the statement of cash flows. So one of the more significant impacts for the decrease is due to the short-term investments, which is the GICs that were purchased during the year. So that you can see has increased to 2 million, where it was 0 in the prior year. Contributing to this as well was $500,000 taken from the restricted cash, which is an internally restricted account, which also contributed to the purchase of the GICs. And you'll see that the AR accounts have also decreased. This is contributing from 131,000 in the prior year. There was the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy that was receivable at year end. This program ended, I believe it was October 2021. So there will be no further, there was no CEWS remittances or income statement amounts recorded in the current year. As I mentioned, there were short-term investments. So there was 2 million purchase of GICs, and this was due to significant cash reserves during the year. Due to Wilfrid Laurier University, this consists of accounts receivable and payable balances between the Students' Union and the university. This will depend on the revenue and expense transactions during the year, and just what payments flowed between the Students' Union and the university. So no significant changes in property and equipment, but there were some significant additions during the year, which included just under 100,000 for elevator upgrades, 264,000 for fire alarm upgrades, and about 140,000 for furniture and equipment at Wills. So this would have been offset by amortization of about 500,000. Looking at our liabilities, our accounts payable and accrued liabilities have increased about 400,000 from the prior year. There weren't anything individually significant, with the exception of the last payroll of the period wasn't paid until after year end this year. So this contributed to about 100,000 in accruals compared to the prior year. Otherwise, it's just the general increase in activity contributed to an all-around increase in this caption. So our deferred revenue is for the health and dental revenue. So the receivable balance consists of fees collected for the September to August year, and the deferred balance consists of amounts relating to May to August. So these amounts haven't been earned yet, so these are deferred to be recognized in the next fiscal year. Next, you'll see that there's a significant decrease in the demand note to Wilfrid Laurier University, and due to the excess of cash balance during the year, the student union made the decision to pay off a significant amount of this balance. And I believe at this point that balance has been fully paid. So next year that it will show as 0 on the financial statements. Our long-term debt, this consists of 3 different loans, I believe. And these were paid down according to the payment schedule. Next, we'll move on to the statement of operations. So we'll have our revenue and expenses, and I'll just jump to our schedule with more details on this. So our statement of revenue for the Fred Nichols Campus Center, we have 1.7 million compared to only 1.4 in the prior year. So the most significant increase in this is related to interest earned on cash reserve during the year. from a high amount of sitting in the bank account. The health and dental revenue have also increased, and this was due to an increase in fees as well as the number of students enrolled in health and dental plans during the year. The WILS has significantly increased during the year, and this is due to the restaurant opening back up during the year, and which started business back up in September 2022. So you'll see an increase in corresponding expenses to go along with this. Looking at the expenses side, so as we noted, the Fred Nichols Campus Center revenue increased. The expenses have also increased, and this is due to the number of staff employed and the corresponding wages for this as a result of the COVID-19 restrictions being lifted. The CEWS, which is the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy, was previously offsetting this account, which again there was no subsidy received this year, so that has contributed to the increase in the expense account. Building operations costs returned closer to normal this year as well, with more use. We'll look at the health and dental account. This can vary year over year depending on the number of students enrolled in the plan and just the claims that are made during the year. So it's reasonable that this would have increased as a result of an increase in students enrolled in the plan. As noted, the WILS revenue increased and the expenses increased significantly. This is mainly due to wages, the restaurant and restaurant expenses such as the food and variable cost for operations. And next we have our statement of changes of fund balances. So no significant transfers between funds. The only transfer during the year was $228,000 from the unrestricted fund to the health plan and contingency fund. As we'll also note, there was a surplus during the year of 1.1 million, which has also contributed to the year increase in cash flows. So this is our detailed overview of cash flows. This notes that cash flows of 5.9 million was your cash balance at the beginning of the year, which ended at 5.4 million, based on the various changes in the balance sheet account. In terms of our financial statement notes, there's no significant differences from prior year. The one new note that we have is in this year is related to the short-term investments, and this is related to the GICs held. So this note discloses the balance of each GIC, the date it matures, and then the interest rate. Matt, were there any more additional notes that you would like me to go through?
No, I think that's great. Thanks, Janelle.
Right.
Before I sort of move on, I pass it over to the chair to see if there's any questions so far.
Are there any questions on the Waterloo boardroom? None? Well, I have a couple questions. What's your opinion on our deferred capital contributions? I believe they've increased.
Yes, those would have increased as a result of the responding that was received for, I believe it was the lounge refresh, if you can correct me, Chris. Yes, so that increased in the year. The responding received, however, the capital assets weren't purchased until the next fiscal year. So that'll see starting in the 2024 fiscal year is when that you'll see that starting to be amortized over the same period as the asset life.
Okay. My second question is in regards to our, I guess, just a simple overall question. What's your professional opinion on our the organization's management of our finances? Can you provide an impartial opinion?
Yeah, sure. And that's there's a lot of layers to that question. But what I can say, is speak somewhat to the financial, health of the organization. And I think a little bit of history is important here as well. So probably 5 or 6 years ago, the student union had, significant debts both to the bank and to the university, had low cash balances and was operating even less than break even. So significant steps have been taken by the management team over the last number of years to improve that. And so one of the ways we can measure this metric is, Janelle, if I get you to go up one page to the asset section. So we see the current assets, which comprise, primarily the cash, accounts receivable, the short-term investments, and the amount due from Laurier, about 8.6 million. And then if we compare that to the liability section below, that's, not quite, but almost double the current liabilities. So that's a very good financial metric. And it is more than the total liabilities of 6.5 million. So what that basically says is you've got significant cash and other short-term resources to meet the obligations of the organization. You continue to generate surpluses and generate positive cash flows from operations. So from a fiscal and financial health, these are very, very good things. As an organization that is, a not-for-profit organization, that does leave then questions around, what is the long-term plan for spending within the student union, because it, might not make sense to continue to generate, significant surpluses into perpetuity without some plan on how to spend that money. So I don't want to put Bill or Chris in a weird spot by saying that, but from, like I said, from a financial health perspective, you are in a very good position, especially compared to what the position was like some years ago.
So essentially, we're actually faced with a positive problem in that we have a little bit more money than we exactly know what we need to do with. So we need to come up with a plan to be able to effectively and responsibly manage our positive cash position. Is that?
Yeah, we call that an opportunity.
Yes.
Not a problem. But yeah, and it is the students' money. And, there's every reason to believe that money will be spent on student activities.
Perfect. Any other questions from either online or other Waterloo directors? No questions from the Waterloo board?
Hold on 2 seconds.
One question. Looking at the expenses page, specifically the turret, compared to 2023 and 2022, it's not much is going on, but I am just curious on what the differences and expenses were for that. How much usage?
I can talk to that one. A couple of years ago, we made the decision to, when we stopped using the turret as an actual nightclub and it was his own kind of independent business, we roll most of the financial activity under the Wilfs umbrella now for things that happen in that physical space. So the $2,300 that showed up in 2023 and the $63 the previous year, those are just kind of relics that from some expenses that just happened to get charged to the turret. But there is still activity happening there. It just gets rolled up under the Wilfs umbrella.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the Waterloo boardroom? I guess I'll ask one more question. From your perspective, Mr. Bettich, what would be some of your suggestions to do with this wonderful opportunity that we now have?
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's been close to 30 years since I was a student at Wilfrid Laurier University. So I'm not really in a position to say. It would be, I would undertake a process to see what the greatest student needs are, and where the student union can make the greatest, contribution to that. That is outside of what would otherwise be the purview of the university itself. So, sorry, that's a bit of a political response, but it's really up to you guys, and what the students are telling you.
Wonderful. So I guess a message to the directors in the upcoming meetings, maybe hopefully by the end of the fiscal year, we can come up with some sort of plan to discuss what are some of the opportunities that we could use. Executive Director, go ahead.
Okay, typically, once the financial audited statements get approved, what will happen is that operationally, we'll kind of put our heads together and ultimately make a recommendation on how to use that money. And give back to students the best way we can. So typically over the last couple of years, we've done a lot of student awards, for example. So that's like grants and bursaries and things of that nature. But those recommendations will be coming as soon as these are approved, just so you know.
Okay, perfect. I await these recommendations promptly. I believe, is this the end of the presentation, Mr. Better?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. Executive Director Champagne, do we now have to motion, does somebody have to motion that the board formally approve the audited financial statements? Is that correct?
That is correct.
Wonderful. Can I get a motion on the table that the board of directors formally endorse or accept the audited financial statements for fiscal year 2022-2023? Director Baldwin, followed up by Director Hamilton. Any further discussion on the matter? Any more comments? I guess I'll leave with some wonderful comments. Thank you for our auditors for attending today's meeting. I know that it may have taken a little bit longer to get to your portion. I'd like to personally appreciate the time and effort that you've put into the presentation and your thoroughness in ensuring that our institution is run to the highest standards in the not-for-profit sector. So for me, deep note of appreciation. On
Appreciate that.
to voting. Any opposition to the motion? Any abstention? All those in favor?
6 in the Waterloo room.
Motion passes 0-0 to 11.
Okay, thank you. We'll sign off for the night. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. I'm going to sign off as well, too. Good night.
Right.
Yes.
I have a quick question. Is it going to be me and the vice chair that signs off physically on these statements?
That's a good question. I don't know if we've ever actually had somebody officially sign off on it. Like we've got it up in the minutes that the board has approved it. But I'll circle back and ask Chris the question.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. On to, is it the ownership?
No, it's
The
athletics.
On to the athletics and recreation discussion. Take it away.
Well, I mean, I can very easily summarize that. This position is that a more formal sponsorship agreement between the Students' Union and the Department of Athletics and Recreation. We've been a kind of unofficial sponsor of that particular department. We'll call it for a number of years. And we're obviously an avid supporter because that department is largely made up of our members. So why wouldn't we be part of that? And so ultimately what we're asking for is the board's permission to approve this agreement because the cash value asked back from Athletics and Recreation exceeds $10,000 for the first time in that history. And so the ask was for 30 because it's in a 3-year agreement. at 10,675, if I remember correctly, per year. And I'm happy to field any questions about the brief that was spent in part of the board package.
Perfect. I'd like to open it up for discussion. Any questions from Director Switzeri?
Yeah, I know that we mentioned like they were losing some of the other sponsorships. Will we be the only sponsor of the Laurier athletic department?
I'll be honest with you, I can't actually answer that question, but I would imagine the answer is no. Off the top of my head, I know Waterloo Brewing, for example, is a pretty heavy sponsor of the Athletics and Recreation Department. So I'm sure there are quite a handful. I'm just not entirely sure what that number would be.
Okay, so I might have misrecalled because I remember you guys mentioning a previous sponsor pulling out and we were kind of taking their place, if I recall correctly.
So that's for the ticketing portion of it.
Okay,
so
perfect.
Morty's used to have exclusive right to the backs of physical tickets, and that offered a 10% discount for anybody at Morty's. So we've taken over, so the backs of those tickets should be Wolf's, and that same discount applies.
And so that's on top of our previous arrangement that we had with the Laurier Athletic Facility.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
So that's an enhancement to the previous agreements that we've had with them.
Okay, and is that the only enhancement?
No, there are actually quite a few. So for example, we typically only have one of, this is gonna sound weird, but the shot clock advertisements of the basketball court. We now have both of the shot clock advertisements. We have a lot more access to actual get members to these particular events. They focus largely on the football, basketball, and hockey programs, both men's and women's. So we have access to be able to give tickets out for those to our members. An enhancement for them is we're hopefully be able to broadcast some of the television rights to the sporting events that are aired on OUA TV. And there's a lot more kind of signage and visibility and partnership going back and forth between the two organizations and being able to get our collective members, our collective messages to the members that hit those facilities. So for example, you may have seen on the Waterloo campus, there was extensive digital screen promotion of the football game for Laurier versus Waterloo last week, if you can call it a football game. And we will continue that collaboration with the game this coming Saturday against Windsor. Just as an example of kind of trying to partner better communication wise.
Okay,
Okay.
Awesome, thank you.
Does that answer your question, Director Switzeri?
Yeah, I was just mostly focusing on what the delta was in terms of what we had previously done versus what we were doing.
Okay, on to the Vice Chair.
So what were previous, if there were sponsorship agreements between the SU and athletics, assuming that they were all under $10,000, right? So what did that look like compared to this package?
So hospitality was a big driver of a lot of the relationship with athletics and recreation under the leadership of the then director, J.S. Balscanton. There's a lot of food support for training camps and things of that nature, a lot of food support for some of the fundraising efforts that they make. For example, in the summer, they have a Laurier Golf Classic. Ultimately, the value of that was plus a cash donation or cash sponsorship. I believe the total was in and around $6,000 of value. So we've kind of increased what that looks like, and it's really a fair trade with what's going forward, back and forth. I had a lot of questions in, which is why it was delayed from the first time we put it on the table, about the value for what we were providing service-wise, because we do a lot of bar service at every one of the football games. We're hoping to expand that service at the basketball games. Obviously, we can't do that for the hockey games because it's not our facility or license. And I thought the numbers were a bit low, but in conversation with our general manager of hospitality, those numbers are actually pretty spot on.
Does that answer your question, Vice Chair?
Thank you very much.
Director Hamilton.
I'm just curious, how long has this been kind of conversation going on for? Like when did it
This
start?
specific conversation,
Yeah, like in terms of this.
the formality of this agreement. So this has been going on, we probably would have touched base at some point in May or June, originally. And then because we kind of went back and forth on the numbers and what the proposition was, we've been delaying it. So we've been doing some of the things that we said we were gonna do, because these are pretty low hanging fruit for this agreement. And ultimately waiting for the opportunity to have the conversation with the board about the value of the contract.
Would you say it's a pretty balanced agreement?
I would 100% say that it's a very balanced agreement, yes. One of the things that we do is put in the ability to kind of circle back and try to get them to develop metrics on what it is that we're getting back, so that we'll be able to track tickets, for example, we'll be able to track collects
Yeah.
visits and stuff. But that is in the bulk of the agreement
Yeah,
itself.
that would be good. I'm just curious, like, in terms of like digital media, for example, like 30 seconds of advertising time, like, be like good to know like, how many times it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Any further questions from directors? I can't
There's
see
another
anything.
question.
Yeah.
Director Russo?
Yeah, I was just curious why 3-year agreement, why?
Just to allow them to be able to budget more consistently across a period of time. It's very difficult for them to have to constantly go year after year to kind of seek out new sponsors, especially at the value that we're kind of getting in kind. And that's pretty much the only reason. I guess I don't have the right to do that, sorry.
Does that answer your question, Director Russo?
Yeah.
We have a couple other questions.
So Vice Chair Santana.
Vice Chair?
When are they looking to have an agreement finalized? Is a region of.
So the goal of this brief is to get you guys to approve that we can kind of spend that money. And then literally as early as tomorrow.
Okay,
Probably wouldn't be tomorrow, but probably this week.
okay.
Any further questions from the Waterloo campus? I can't
Yeah,
see.
there's another question, yeah.
Director Monroe.
Who's the, Director Mahari?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of my questions, but in terms of like finalizing the date of the agreement, the second is more so the focus on recreation, because I feel like there's a lot of emphasis on promotion and media on athletics, like as you mentioned, the basketball, football, I know that's the biggest focus. I was just wondering within this brief period, if there was room for, I guess, changes to the recreation part, because right now it's just a sponsor logo and then the email blast right now. But in terms of anything to be, I guess, more effort on the recreational side, whether that's through group X stands, and however we can be more involved on that side, because I know right now it's very much on the athletics. So I'm just curious in terms of like how much leeway in changing flexibility, yeah.
So I'll be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure what it is that you're asking us to change for the recreational side. We obviously recognize that the recreation is arguably the biggest part of athletics for us,
Right.
because more of our members are engaged with recreation than they are on varsity.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what specifically you had in
So
mind.
like, even like, just any effort in terms of like, let's say the equipment, or like, I know there's a uniform for, the recreational instructor, for example. So I just was wondering if there was more effort into that.
So there's an advocacy role there for us to play to help resource those areas better. We could advocate through this agreement to potentially use the money in that area.
Okay.
Because
I was just wondering what the engagement is like for like through the athletes versus just recreational participants.
So we view those as athletes as well, just for the record. And so a lot of our engagement, we try to be as passive as a sponsor with those folks as well, but very active with them through our advocacy efforts with our partners in student affairs. I'll be honest with you, there is a lot of confusion at this particular time, not with me specifically, but not with me either. Between all of the different ties going back and forth between the athletics recreation department, the student affairs department, and the students union. Because it feels like we've done a lot of advocacy to try to make it a lot more accessible for all athletes to be able to access that space and those services and those programs.
Right.
While at the same time, we're sponsors kind of in a business relationship with them, so it feels a little bit confusing to me. Literally was in a meeting this morning about the referendum question that's coming from athletics. For this upcoming action period, and doing a lot of advocacy through that department about what that facility could look like. But that being said, if we could probably have further conversation and have discussion with Evan, so it's Evan Colburn who leads this, and talk about kind of where these funds ultimately end up going. We're not entirely sure how much power we have in that regard, but I'm always one to ask, like, let's ask the question for sure.
Okay, beautiful.
Does that answer our,
Yeah.
who else has a question?
Director Baldwin, next question.
Director Baldinelli, go ahead.
So for like the money provided, are there any like cost adjustments or like inflation in the agreement if something does arise?
Like from 10, 6, 6, 7,
Yeah.
5? No, it's a flat number for the 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do.
Okay, go ahead, Vice Chair, again.
So for other agreements of like a similar nature or sponsoring, whatever, I don't know what's been in the past. What have been ways that they have updated the board on showing that the money that we're providing is going for the right ways and keeping them accountable, really?
So typically, the updates haven't necessarily come as explicitly as a brief to the board before, because it was under the particular values. It was all part of the budget that would have been approved at the end of the year for the next fiscal. But because this is a 10K, there is a different ask that we can kind of have the board ask for, which could include the metric that we mentioned earlier, apologize. And where we can start to talk about, hey, where are these dollars going for students? And then there might be an opportunity in that to kind of open the door to update a little bit more clearly on some of the advocacy efforts that are going on in other conversations outside of the sponsorship.
Right.
Okay, perfect. I need
Sorry,
other,
just one last thing.
go ahead.
It is also worth noting that the Department of Athletics and Recreation on that referendum question have been asked to come and talk to the board, and they should be here, I believe, at the next meeting. Is that correct? On the 13th of November? Okay.
November
Spenny?
16th, November 16th.
Okay.
Perfect.
So
I have,
we can ask them more questions there.
I have a quick question for the executive director. Is this like a legal contract, like a legal written contract that we're approving?
Yes,
Okay, and who's gonna be signing for it?
pardon me?
Who will be signing the
I'll
contract?
be President Spindler and myself, probably.
Perfect. Just making sure that like if we're gonna be allocating $30,000+ of student money, that there will be a firm legal contract. Is there an opportunity for the board to review it after signature?
An opportunity to review after which, sorry?
After signature.
Yes, but we may want to do that in camera, but yes.
Sure, we can do that. President Spindler.
Yeah, I just want to say quickly, I think we confused you guys with the dates, so apologies. Athletics is coming on Monday, November 13th to the next board meeting, not the 16th. Sorry for confusing you guys. It's definitely the 13th.
Perfect. Yeah, if the board can get access to that for in-camera review, that would be greatly appreciated. Perfect. On to ownership linkage. Any last, oh wait, we need to get a motion to approve. Can I get a motion to approve the board of directors? I guess approve the proposal as presented. Director Russo, seconded by Director Ellis. Any further discussion or questions on this matter? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Well, at least for 3 years.
Okay, as I see none, we can move into voting. Any opposition to the motion? Abstention? As I see none, all those in favor?
Stacy Waterloo.
Motion passes 0-0 to 11. Wonderful. I trust that the athletics and recreation team will be using our now approved student dollars wisely. And we look forward to the success from the marketing initiative. On to the ownership linkage committee update. What are we?
Dana's doing it.
Okay, on to the ownership linkage committee update. Take it away, Vice Chair.
Okay, so we met last week, so next week, we are going to be, myself, the chair, and Director Corey are meeting with the assistant director of marketing, just to talk about ways we can involve them in further campaigns. We also talked about potential of boothing at the end of November to talk about. I'm completely like Director Corey, you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah, so most of it is, like you said, we'll be meeting with the acting director of marketing to discuss sort of the Instagram and board branding thing that we discussed a couple months ago now. We've finalized regular meetings of the committee, so it'll be happening bi-weekly on weeks where the board isn't sitting as the full board. Full list of dates is on the briefing if anyone wants to attend. Collaboratively with the campus safety committee, we're looking to do a boothing initiative, and so that sort of what we were looking was between November 6th and 10th, sort of 1 to 3 days that week, probably 2. What we're kind of looking for is to get feedback from students, just in kind of their perceptions of campus safety, what they perceive the students union is doing, and kind of garnering feedback from that. So kind of we're looking to get some funding to provide incentives for that boothing, as anyone who's boothed very well knows. If you don't have incentives, nobody really comes. Basically, what we're looking to do here is just firmly establish dates both in Waterloo and in Brantford for when that boothing would take place. As well, I have a meeting with President Spendler tomorrow to discuss possibly using faculty associations and Greek Life Council to permit a greater variety of the opinions that we get. We just believe that kind of those two groups might have a little bit more to say. As well as we received a reply from LMA, which we discussed in the last update. And they've directed us to the advertising project. And so kind of we've had a preliminary contact with them. So we're seeing where the discussion with the marketing director as well as where this goes. And we should have something a little bit more concrete by the next board meeting for that. The only other thing is just for elections programming. The ownership linkage committee is more than happy to work alongside the governance coordinator to see how we can do some ownership linkage during the election season. Haven't had the time yet to schedule a sit down for that. If anyone has any questions.
Okay, we will now open it for discussion. Any comments from the Waterloo board?
We have a question, Director Russo.
I'm just, you guys said we're gonna try, did you say we're gonna try boothing between the 6th and the 10th? Does the whole board have to like sign up for spots, or is it just the ownership linkage committee that's gonna do that?
So ideally, kind of the most bodies we can get on it, the better. Kind of the way that it's the way that we found that boothing kind of works within that discussion was just if the more people that we have kind of makes it look like a bigger crowd and draw students in. But kind of we know that it's a busy time and that there's a whole lot of things going on for a whole lot of people. And so it wouldn't be kind of the entire board is required to go. It would just be, if you're available, then we'd appreciate a hand.
Yeah, so I'm going to actually double down on that. Ownership linkage is one of the core mandates of the board, something that all directors implicitly sign on to as being a director. It is part and parcel of your responsibility of a director to engage with the ownership. So I'm not going to say I expect all directors to attend, but I am going to kindly ask that all directors show up in some capacity or another, even for 15-20 minutes to engage with our membership. This is like the second most important thing that the board does, engaging with our membership other than governance. Vice Chair Russo, you had something. Oh, sorry, Vice Chair Rubinoff, you were saying something.
I was just gonna, as well as, going back to what Director Corey said, that we talked about in the meeting. Having a lot more directors on a booth for a short amount of time is a lot more successful than just having a lot of time with one or two directors there. So I think it would be really important that when we go to book a booth, that it's just the most amount of directors are free at that time, and it's just for 1 or 2 hours instead of just 3 people there for like 5 hours.
Yeah. I am going to share that, like, we're all very busy people. I personally have a part-time job and I'm dealing with multiple priorities all at the same time. I will be making a very conscious effort to go to Waterloo for our ownership linkage event meeting. And I will hopefully bring as many Brantford directors with me as I can. So, please show up when you get the call to do that. Any further things from the update?
Yeah, what we were just looking to do was schedule some dates and times, just when the most amount of people are available, and sort of figured that out, and then we can take it back. And sort of work out the details. The other question I had that I'm just not entirely sure on is, are we in a place where we're able to access those funds, or will we
For
need
what?
board approval? Just for the incentive.
Oh, the ownership linkage, that's already been approved by last year's board, so I'll just have to sign off. I'll just have to approve and sign off on a request.
Okay.
There was one more thing that I did want to bring to the board's attention, which we did, I believe, discussed last week or last meeting, but important to note anyway. We have discussed, or I have discussed internally with our governance team, and the best idea that we have going forward in order to bring forward special guests to our board would be to have a presentation by our government and stakeholder relations department to the board. So I'd like to formally motion that the board of directors invite the government and stakeholder relations vice president to come and present to the board at the next board meeting. Can I get a seconder on that motion? And then we can open it up to discussion. Vice Chair Rubinoff. Now we'll open it for discussion. So does anybody have any questions regarding why I've put this motion forward? Vice Chair Rubinoff, go ahead.
I just have a question, to clarify a question. What sort of format would that be? Like they would come up, present, and will there be option to ask questions, or is it
Yes.
an open discussion?
Yes. So the plan would be that the GSR team come with a presentation and then engage in a question and answers period so that we could take their advice when planning to invite a special guests to our board meeting. We can discuss as a board if we want to make them part of a regular meeting or have a special meeting, maybe during business hours to make it easier and more attainable for the guests to come and speak to us. So it would be like a separate session in between board meetings for that. Director Hamilton, you had a question.
No, it was answered.
Any further questions on Director Corey?
So when you say govern or GSR team, would it just be Viv or would sort of how big of a presentation are we talking?
So this would be the vice president of GSR and anybody that they believe would be would add value to the presentation. Okay, any further questions on the motion? Director Muller.
Just you have athletics and recreation booked for this 13th already, so I don't know if you're wanting two presentations on the same day or if you're wanting to alter the timing of it.
I don't believe it should be too much of a problem since the presentation, I believe, should be rather short with its recommendations and how to approach. But I do take Director Muller's point. Any further comments based on that comment? Okay, as I see none, we can now move into voting. Any opposition to the motion? Abstentions? All those in favor?
6 in the order.
Motion passes 0 to 0 to 11. What's next on the agenda?
We just have to still pick those dates
Still have to pick what dates
for boothing.
for boothing. So we will now move into discussing boothing days. Do we want to go to that as a committee, come up with like 2-3 dates and then present it to the board? We could always do that.
I mean, ultimately, kind of, we're either gonna go to the committee, come back with dates and say, does this work? Or we can do it here and just pick dates
Okay.
that work for the most amount of people. So I think
Makes
it's
sense.
just a little bit faster to do it this way.
So can I get some suggestions on dates and times that work for people during business hours? I understand that some directors are engaged in co-op, so do not fret. I understand. You may not be able to come, not a problem. Director Ellis.
I was thinking for me, I know that I'm on the Waterloo campus on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I should be available after 12 o'clock on the 7th and the 9th. Those would probably work best for me just because I am from the Brantford campus, so Tuesdays and Thursdays after like 12 o'clock would be good for me. Other than that, Friday, the 10th should also be pretty open.
Director Hamilton.
Yeah, just a second, that Tuesday is looking good for me as well. I could do 12 to 1 or 12 to 2 before class. And then I'm sure I could do Thursday. Sorry, Orlando has a comment as well.
Is this like a directors only sort of helping for boothing? Because I can always help booth
Yeah.
if directors are unavailable, but if it's like
Absolutely.
a directors only.
No, this is definitely not like a director's only boothing session. I would absolutely appreciate if you're able to attend as well. The invitation is also open to the president and her VP staff if they are interested in attending, just as a notice.
Supplement boothing in terms like if directors that are available at certain times, like we can supplement it then.
Yes, so actually what I was thinking of doing, Sebastian, do you want to open up like an Excel sheet where we can all put? Or
Yeah, I can.
Excel would probably be easier. So here's what we're going to be doing. We're gonna, Director Corey is opening up a spreadsheet where we could put in our times and dates. And then people, and then directors will be able to input their time. What I believe the best way to do this would be we open the spreadsheet as soon as possible, leave it up until tomorrow midday for directors to open it up, and then I'll send an email to all directors with the specific times that we would hope to commit to. Does that work for everyone? So that we don't hold up directors, as I believe it's already past 8 o'clock, and I don't want to keep directors any longer than they absolutely have to. So does that strategy work for everyone? I don't need like a formal vote, but like just can I get some thumbs up at least on what's the thumbs up ratio in the I don't know what.
6 thumbs up.
6 thumbs up. Wonderful. So Director Corey will send an Excel sheet to everyone please answer it and respond no later than like 11 a.m. tomorrow. So that, you know,
Well, I probably won't check it till probably around midnight tomorrow, so just give it till 11:59, count it as an assignment.
so yeah, exactly. Very good point, Director Corey. This is an assignment. It's due tomorrow by 11:59. So please answer it all, and then I'll send out an email to all directors with the specific times and places so that we can meet. Wonderful. Is that all for the Ownership Linkage Committee update?
That's all I have. Unless the vice chair has something.
Vice Chair, do you have anything else?
No, that was, I don't know, yeah.
Okay, and this is just a reminder to all directors that while we are boothing generally, we would like to gather some input from students on their campus safety experience. This is especially recent. This is especially relevant considering recent events. Okay, I believe that is all. If I recall correctly, I believe that is all. We can now move into the action items.
Announcements and action items, yeah.
Okay, do any directors have announcements to share?
Law school application submitted. Woo, woo.
Executive Director, go ahead.
Yeah, I just, we're in the process of working with student affairs and athletics to subsidize tickets for Saturday's football game against Windsor. I believe our intention is to be able to buy a bulk group of tickets and give those away to the first fill in the blank here. So let's say 500 tickets free for students. So look forward to that announcement when that gets sorted out, hopefully tomorrow.
Okay.
Otherwise, go Hawks, go.
Perfect. Any further announcements to share?
I guess I was at OOF, was it 2 weekends ago? The Ontario University's Fair, and it was great. Lots of students interested in Laurier. So I thought I'd pass that along. I know we had some people from Students Union there that I'm sure could say that as well, but just wanted to say it was really good. We had lots of interest for Laurier.
Okay, wonderful. Any Director Spitzeri, go ahead.
I spent last week in Ottawa, kind of representing Laurier at a university conference, case competition thing. So
Cool.
It's pretty fun, pretty cool. We managed to get the win, so hopefully they'll do a press release about that. So that's pretty cool.
Wonderful. Was that in Actus?
No, it was called ROCA, so it was like a bunch of different universities from like Asia, Europe, North America.
Wonderful.
So it was a good win.
Congratulations.
Very fun. Yeah,
well done.
thanks.
Any other announcements?
That spreadsheet is in the ownership linkage committee folder on Teams.
So Director Corey just shared that the spreadsheet is now available on the ownership linkage committee file, but Director Corey, if you could send a link, an email with a link to upgrade. President Spenley.
Yeah, I just had something quick. I meant to say earlier, but I forgot. I know some of you are in Res Life, and for those of you who aren't, I was just curious. I'm presenting to the Waterloo Leadership Council on Wednesday, which is all of the presidents of the house councils for the Waterloo campus. And I was curious to see if there's anything that you guys would want me to try to bring back, like anything you want to know from first years about the students union. Like I obviously have some ideas on things that I'd like to inquire.
No, please go ahead. The question will wait.
Go ahead, Phil.
I just say contextually that meeting is exclusively about food service.
Okay, in that case, never mind. Maybe I had too many ideas for it, but yeah, that you're probably right about that.
That doesn't mean that you can't speak to other things, but the conversation, the reason that we're there is for food service.
Okay, wonderful. Any last announcements? Okay, we'll now go into the actions item summary. To my knowledge, the only action item for next week or for the next board meeting is for everyone to submit their availability, and then for people to actually attend the meeting. I will discuss with the co-chairs of the committee some sort of incentive that we could do for the boothing. I would like to maybe let directors know that the incentive is not only for the students, it is also for the directors who are spending their time there. So within reason, we'll see if we could do, depending on the turnout, if we could do some sort of snacks and refreshments. Anything else? Any other action items? Okay, wonderful. We can now move into adjournment. Can I get a motion that the Board of Directors adjourn the October 30th, 2023 meeting? Director Ellis, followed up by Director Baldwin. Any discussion on the matter? Okay, as I see none, I'd like to thank all of the directors for their participation today and their good questions. Thank you for attending. I'm actually really surprised. We are very well ahead of time. So thank you for your engagement, but also your concise thoughts. I'll see you. Please answer all your emails and positively reply. This is my last reminder. Please positively reply to the invitations to the board meetings. Please and thank you. That's it. We will now move into voting. Any opposition to the motion? Abstention? All those in favor?
6 in the Waterloo border.
What?
6 in the Waterloo boardroom.
Motion passes